Lord of the Mysteries. Chapter 1048. Real and Fake Spy. In the ancient palace above the grey fog, with the world Gehrman Sparrow's words coming to an end, no one spoke for a moment. The entire place was silent. The psychology alchemists are cooperating with the king's faction and are investigating Zio and I. The founding of the psychology alchemists originated from the discovery of a Hermes ruins, and Hermes is a member of the Twilight Hermit Order. Its leader happens to be Angel of Imagination Adam. And Zio and I had mentioned Adam in the real world. We're in the sights of a king of angels? This. In the world of mysticism, just a slight mistake can result in such dangerous circumstances. Ferz's mind was filled with Gehrman Sparrow's warnings as she was gripped by horror and panic. Although she had experienced many things in the past, she had never had such a clear realization of the thorny path beyond her tread. Any mistakes could lead to a terrible consequence. I have to be more cautious in the future. Of course, the premise is that I can survive under the watch of King of Angels Adam. May Mr. Fool bless me. Furz seriously reflected on the matter and silently prayed. Zio also didn't expect her situation to be so perilous. She didn't expect that something like this would involve a king of angels. She couldn't help but feel horrified and fearful, but she had already decided to sacrifice herself for the truth. She rapidly calmed down, but couldn't help but shoot a glance at the magician, feeling guilty for pulling her good friend into this conundrum. At this point in time, crying and feeling remorse won't solve the problem anymore. All I can do is try my best to keep Furz alive at the critical moment. Fortunately, there's still Mr. Fool's blessings. Zio cast her gaze at Justice Audrey as she thought to herself. Then what should we do next? She had mixed feelings towards Miss Justice's recommendation. On the one hand, she knew that Audrey thought highly of the Tarot Club and had recommended her purely out of good intentions. On the other hand, she felt that she had gained the notice of a secret existence for no good reason. Thankfully, it was Mr. Fool, or she would have died a tragic death long ago. Even her soul wouldn't be able to receive deliverance. Well, I guess it's because I voluntarily chanted Mr. Fool's honorific name that I was dragged into it. There wasn't any coercion. Ultimately, I'm sitting here of my own volition. It has nothing to do with Miss Justice. Also, if it weren't for her recommendation, I might never have such an opportunity to grow stronger to seek out the truth. Zio pursed her lips as she furtively took a deep breath. Justice Audrey knew about the relationship between the Twilight Hermit Order, Hermes, and Adam, so she was the calmest one there. She just never expected that Furz and Zio's casual mention of the Angel of Imagination had garnered his attention. This made her have an unprecedented awareness of the horror behind the words. Any mention of it will be known. After some deliberation, Audrey looked at the world Gehrman Sparrow and tried to interpret his words. Does Mr. Fool mean that he doesn't want to directly make an enemy of the Twilight Hermit Order at the moment? Does that mean that it can be done indirectly? Klein nodded slightly and said, that should be the case. Does it involve interfering with divination, one's attention, and prophecies? Audrey asked. At this mini-gathering, the world Gehrman Sparrow represented the will of the Fool. Klein laughed and hoarsely said, perhaps a little more indirect. He answered vaguely because the Fool hadn't thought of what to do either. Their conversation seemed to inspire Alger. He looked at Justice, the Magician, and Judgment, one after another. Which of you is a believer of the Evernight Goddess? He was almost certain that at least one of the three ladies believed in the Evernight Goddess. After all, among the people of Lone and the residents of Backland, the standards for women, and those who had been educated, these filtered out most of the believers of other deities. I am, Zio said without hiding anything. Audrey raised her hand slightly. Seeing this, Alger nodded slightly. We can try to mislead someone and make it seem like the Church of Evernight did something against Vin Rambus, not the Tarot Club. As he said this, Alger skillfully changed the pronoun he used to refer to the group. He was only invited to be a consultant, and wouldn't actually be involved in the matter. He should have said you should do this and that, but he had chosen to use we. pushing the blame to the Church of Evernight. This line of thought seems really familiar. Klein, in his The World Gehrman Sparrow's manifestation, suddenly found it amusing. Then how should the misdirection be done? Audrey's eyes shifted slightly as she hurriedly asked. Alger looked around and said, Vin Rambus only hypnotized you to not seek blessings and sit in key spots at the Church of Evernight's Mass where you can be cleansed to a certain degree. But he didn't ask you to avoid the Church of Evernight's Archbishop. You can use this to create an opportunity. Meet the Archbishop. Of course, there's no need to say anything. This way, when Vin Rambus dies or vanishes, the psychology alchemists will most probably suspect that the Church of Evernight had detected something wrong with you and had set up a trap. Without waiting for Miss Justice to respond, he looked at Zio. After you're hypnotized but before you leave Backlund, head to the nearest church of the Evernight goddess and pray seriously. Act like a spy sent by the Church of Evernight to infiltrate the Tarot Club. This will misdirect the psychology alchemists into believing that the matters pertaining to Vin Rambus were done by the Tarot Club, but was in fact a smokescreen. The true mastermind behind all of this is the Church of Evernight, acting like a spy in the Tarot Club that was sent by the Church of Evernight. Well, Klein felt a little guilty. He was a genuine blessed of Evernight, and Leonard was a genuine Red Glove. It should be said that the Tarot Club's convener and host, Mr. Fool, also draws the crimson moon on his chest. Klein muttered in amusement and helplessness. As a result, he was also rather inspired. This can only fool typical Beyonders. Without the blessings of Mr. Fool's angel, the higher-ups of the psychology alchemists can easily figure out the truth. Katla reminded. The hangman replied. So, the main point is that we should be indirectly blessed by Mr. Fool. Otherwise, would it be impossible for us to deceive the Spectator Pathway's King of Angels, Adam? Also, Miss Magician and Miss Judgment, when you pray at the Cathedral of the Evernight Goddess, it's best if you pray to Mr. Fool and get his help in extricating yourself from the hypnosis and not immediately leave Backlund. Under such circumstances, Backlund is safer than anywhere else. All right, Zio replied seriously. Seeing that the discussion had reached this point, Audrey and the others all looked towards the World Gehrman Sparrow, awaiting his response. Klein's thoughts had already taken shape. He deliberated for a moment, then laughed hoarsely. Actually, there are simpler ways to interfere. What methods are there? Audrey's eyes widened as she asked with concern. Klein looked at Miss Justice and pointed at the top of his head. Once Vin Rambus leaves, burn that hat accessory and trigger the charm I gave you. That feather hat accessory? The hat accessory that can get a so-called response from death? Mr. World hopes to get this existence to disrupt the divination, attention, and prophecy. Audrey's green eyes sparkled as she nodded in thought. I know what to do. When that happens, the response would be the power of concealment. This way, no matter what happens, Adam can only assume that the goddess had interfered, believing that she had blessed the Hall family and has nothing to do with the Tarot Club. I wonder if the goddess will send Ma'am Ariana. That way, finishing off Vin Rambus will be made very simple. If not, I'll give myself Angel's Embrace ahead of time and use my marionettes which are dead. That will result in a high chance of victory. Klein mumbled inwardly without saying anything else. Just as Audrey quickly completed her plan, doing so as though she was talking to herself as she spoke to Zio and Furs. Visit me on Wednesday afternoon. This way, I'll have a chance to see the Church of Evernight's Archbishop in advance. I'll pray to Mr. Fool for him, to provide his angelic blessings. That way, I won't be hypnotized by Vin Rambus when I meet him. We'll act once he leaves. Vin Rambus is a cautious and conservative person. He should continue choosing to meet me on the way to prevent himself from being caught or from falling into a trap. Soon, amidst the discussions of the other members of the Tarot Club, the plan was complete. The World Gehrman Sparrow declined Katla's suggestion of providing help. After all, he couldn't guarantee that powerhouses from the Church of Evernight would be involved. As for the payment, all the spoils would belong to the world, and Audrey would provide him with a free help commission according to his request. On Wednesday afternoon, in Viscount Glaint's residence. After returning to the Turf Club, Audrey, who was wearing a simple white dress shirt and a pair of pants of the same, bright leather boots, and a black leather jacket that clung to her waist, stood inside the Viscount's study and looked at Zio and Furs. "Who got you to investigate Viscount Stratford and pursue the king's secret?" Her green eyes were like an ancient pool of water in a deep mountain. It was quiet, deep and clear, making one unknowingly sink into it. At this moment, Zio and Furs were really hypnotized. The former answered in a daze. "It was me. I'm investigating the cause of my father's death. However, I do pray to a particular existence to bless me." Audrey asked a few more questions and received a satisfactory answer. Then, she said with a gentle voice, "Leave Backland and leave this place. You don't belong here. All right, you'll wake up when you hear me clap." The moment she said that, Audrey clapped her hands and saw Zio and Furz's eyes regain their clarity. After exchanging a few more pleasantries, Zio and Furs bade her farewell and left. Audrey began to wait patiently. She planned to stay inside Viscount Glaint's residence for another half an hour. She was waiting for Zio to enter the nearest Evernight Goddess Cathedral and finish her prayers before heading elsewhere. This way, regardless of whether Vin Rambus appeared en route or elsewhere, she would be prepared. Picking up the lady's bonnet with a white feather accessory, Audrey walked out of the study, planning to meet up with Susie and Annie first before chatting with Glaint to kill time. She had just taken 2 steps when she heard a gentle and smiling voice. "Well done!" Audrey's pupils dilated as she hurriedly turned her head, only to see a silver-haired man standing next to an elegant wall lamp rack. His eyes were light blue, and his clothes were neat. He was none other than Vin Rambus. This demigod was actually waiting in Viscount Glaint's residence for Audrey to complete the hypnosis and receive the answer. At this moment, Zio and Furs probably hadn't walked out the main door. This was completely outside Audrey's expectations and the hanged man's analysis. This meant that Vin Rambus was present, so there was no need to question the target through Audrey. Being in the vicinity and personally hypnotizing them was just as dangerous.